Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So this is day 2 for Redis Zero to Hero series. So in this video, we will discuss how to set up Redis in our local laptop, and we will also demonstrate few of the practical commands which are very heavily being used in Redis. So without wasting time, let's get started. Right. So first of all, we need to install the Redis in our local machine, right? So before installing Redis, we need to understand few of the components which are provided by the Redis, right? So what actually Redis provides? So there are two executables in the Redis. One is the Redis CLI and the other is the Redis server, right? So when we install Redis, it installs the Redis server as well as the Redis CLI, and also installs all the tools which we need to interact with the Redis server, right? So by default, Redis server listens on port 6379. It can be changed, but let's not change it at this moment. Let's keep it same for time being. Editing the configuration file and other stuff I will be explaining later, but just understand the components which are provided by the Redis first, right? So the Redis server listens on port 6379. This is the server which stores the data in memory, and this is the same server which provides so many data structures similar to what we have in programming language, for example list, set and other data structures. So this is the main server which provides all those data structures, right? So to interact with this server, we have Redis CLI. So via this, we can interact with this server. We can issue all the commands. So if you remember the Kafka series, right? So in that we do have the Kafka server, the brokers, and then we have the different utilities through which we interact with the broker. For example, the Kafka topics commands was there were different script files were present there. So similar happens with Redis. So Redis provide the Redis CLI through which we can issue the commands to the Redis server. Okay, so Redis does not provide declarative programming language like SQL structured query language. Since Redis comes under database category, many of new guys thinks that okay, it would also provide SQL like query language. So there is nothing like that. So it has imperative commands, right? So we have lot of commands, right? Don't worry, we will discuss all those commands and we will also build real world projects based out of those commands, right? So these are executables which can be type into this terminal and we can start these executables, right? So it's very simple. So in one terminal we can type Redis server and the Redis server would be starting up, and in another terminal we would be just typing the Redis CLI and the Redis CLI would be coming up through which we can issue the commands. Now I'll just show you the approaches, how the different ways by which we can install the Redis in our machine, right? So the very first way is, if you Google redis.io, right, you will come across this site. Now on this site, if you go down, you can download the Redis open source and you can install it on your machine. This is one of the approach or one of the way by which you can install the Redis. The other thing is you can take the cloud managed instance, Redis instance, which we already talked in day 1 of that, the commercial services which are provided by the Redis, right? So this is the second approach. Now what we will do is, for this we will need to download it, we need to install it on our machine. Now again, there could be different type of users. Some might be using Windows, some might be using Mac, right? So it could raise issues that okay, I'm not able to install, I'm facing this problem. So to handle all those cases, the other approach is, what we can do is we can just use the Docker image, right? The official Docker image on any environment, on any operating system, it would just work out of the box. So what we will do is, I'll just show you, right? So what we will prefer is we will use Docker to install the Redis on our machine, right? So I have just prepared the Docker file. I'll just show you, right? So this is the Docker file which we can use it, right? And so if you have already seen my Kafka series, right, so there also we have used Docker file to install the Kafka, right? Similarly here, so the version is the very first thing which we need to mention in the Docker compose, and we are just installing this service, Redis service, right? The container name we have given Redis, and the host name and the image what we are using, the Redis 8.2, and 6379 is the port which we already discussed, right? Now you might have few questions. Okay, how you decide what is the image, what is the version? So what I have done is, right, I'll just show you. What I have done is I have just gone to the Docker Hub file, Docker Hub website, right? So if you go over there, so if you search the Redis, from the Redis you would come to know what all Docker official images are provided by the Redis, right? So if you go down, so these are the images which are provided by the Redis, right? So here what I am currently using, I am using 8.2 version, so that's why I have provided 8.2, right? So we are done. Now what we need to do is we just need to do Docker in the terminal. What you need to do is docker compose up -d, right? So -d means you want to run this service in detach mode, right? So just run this, right? And the Docker, the Redis Docker container is up. So if we go to the terminal, right, and I'll just use the command docker ps-a. So if you see over here, the Docker Redis is up and running, right? So the Docker container up and running. Now if I go inside it, right, so how I can go is Redis bash, right? So docker execute the interactive terminal, then I just want to go to the Redis container via bash, so I just enter that. Now when you start the Redis, you start this service, right? You start this service, by default it spins up the Redis server. Okay, it spins up the Redis server which we have discussed here. It spins up this thing. Redis server has been up and running now, right? So what we need to do now is we need to just interact with the Redis server. So in this instance, what we need to just call that the Redis CLI. Now Redis CLI, what I said, when we install the Redis, with the all the executables are already being installed inside, also along with the Redis, right? So Redis CLI, Redis server, both are being installed. What we need to do is, if I issue the ping command, right, I get the pong. So this verifies that our Redis is set up correctly with the help of Docker image. So this is how simple it is to install Redis with the help of Docker file, right? So if you are really interested to install the Redis by other means, so what you can do is, for if you want to install on your local machine, you can just with the help of brew, you can install the Redis in your local machine, and then again the similar thing, everything is already being installed. You just need to do how to use it just in terminal 1. Like similarly, what we have done is, in terminal 1 we have just started up the Redis instance, right? So it by default spins up the server, right? So to interact with the server, we just need to execute the command Redis CLI. So that's how we have done it, right? So we just entered the Redis CLI and we just issued the command ping and we got the response pong. So this is how we can install the Redis. And now the Redis has been correctly set up. Now let's discuss few of the commands which we can use in Redis. Let's create a simple key value pair in Redis. As we earlier discussed, right? So Redis is a simple key value store. It supports various data structures. So okay, now what is key? Key is nothing but a variable name similar to what we declare in Java class, right? In Java, we have primitive types like integer, float, double, boolean, char, etc. Right? So similar kind of key we can create in Redis. But Redis is very simple. It stores everything in string representation. The key name can be anything, can be any binary sequence. Redis doesn't complain as long as you are okay. Redis can support 2 raised to power 32 keys, that is more than 4 billion keys. And what is the maximum size of one key? The 512 MB is the maximum size of one key, right? Now the very basic commands which can be used to store or to create a key value pair in Redis is set and get. Set is used to create the key value pair and get is used to get the value for a specific key. Let's go to the Redis CLI and try these commands. Alright, so I'll quickly go to the Redis CLI. So this is the Redis CLI, right? So what I will do is I will just try to run these commands. For example, the set command. So it accepts set. If you see, it accepts key and value. So for example, if I do set a comma set a space b, so what it will do is where a is the key name and the b is the value, right? So if I enter, it will give you the okay that it has successfully stored this key value pair, right? Now if you want to access the key, right, the command which you have to use is the get command, right? So get, then we need to pass the key. What is the key? The a. So if we pass get a, it would give me the value b, right? So these are very simple commands which can be used to create key value pair and also to retrieve the value for a specific key, right? So if you see over here, there are no double quotes, nothing needs to be mentioned over here, right? Because everything is stored in string representation in Redis. Now what if I do get and key, if I pass which we have not created yet, if I do that, so it would return nil. It is similar to Java. Like Java, if we don't have any value to any member variable or any variable, so what it would return? It returns null, right? So similar here. So if the value or key pair is not existed, so it simply returns nil, similar to Java. Okay, your next question could be, what if I need to store the number? So what you need to do is set a or set a space 1, right? So if you do this, if you do the get, right, then you would see it returns the value as 1. Okay, right? So if you need to store the float, for example, set a 100.43, right? Now if you do get a, the value is being changed to 100.43. so everything in Redis is just a simple string. So you can create key with any name and value can be anything, right? For example, even you can create this string with, for example, dot, and you can pass hey, even you can pass dot, and you can pass for example, the value is high, right? So even this can be a key in Redis. Redis doesn't complain as soon as you are okay. So if I pass get and if I do get this, it would just return high, right? So Redis never complains about anything, right? Because everything is stored in string representation in Redis. Now let's discuss what are the best practices to create a key value pair in Redis, right? As till now we have just created the keys with any name, right? If you see here, we have created the key with, for example, set a, the key name is a, the key name is c, kind of that, right? So we have given any key name, any random key name, but there should be something standard which we need to follow while creating the key value pair. Let's discuss all those things, right? Okay, even though Redis is an in-memory database, but there is no concept of table or collection in Redis, right? Redis encourages developers to follow their own standards for key names. Means it's up to you. With any, you can give any key name to create a key value pair. But if you are working in an organization, there are multiple teams working together, right? So you need to create some standard among other teams so that everyone should follow the same standard to access the key value pair in Redis. So what is the normal standard which everyone follows in the organization, right? Let's discuss that. So for example, you have the relational database, right? You have the users table. For example, the users table has 4 columns: ID, name, email, age, right? And let's say there are 2 users with the ID 100 and the ID 101. Now, okay, if I ask you what endpoint you would create to fetch these user, you will create the endpoint like this: /user /100, right? And to fetch a particular detail, or to fetch a particular which is very frequently used column, for example, let's say hypothetically, let's say the name is the column which is very frequently being accessed among many services. So what you do, to even you don't need to give the whole object to all the other services. What you do, you expose another endpoint with the particular column name. For example, in this case, what you would do, user 100 name, this endpoint you would expose so that it can be used by all the other services, right? So similar pattern we can follow in Redis. So with this in mind, we can create keys in Redis. For example, the key pattern could be like this: the user :100. So this would be the key. Even though if other service in your organization want to get the details for this user, it can simply try to fetch the user from with this key. It would be easily get the all the complete row, right? It would easily get the complete row for this user. So this is the standard which we follow to create a particular key value pair in Redis. So let's take one more example. Let's say the movie show table, right? For example, in Book My Show, you go to the Book My Show, you book the particular seats and you book the particular show at a particular time, right? So let's, for simplicity, let's say there is a database table here, movie show table, which has the following columns: the show ID, movie name, screen, city, start time, and available seats. Okay, now there could be any other services also which would need these details. So how the REST endpoints you would expose? For example, the REST endpoints you would invoke, expose like show 800, right? So this is the particular show. If anyone wants to fetch the details for this particular show, right, it can call this REST endpoint and show onto the front end, right? But while you are booking the seats, that is the column which is very frequently and very often being used, right? So in that case, you would expose one more endpoint. For example, show 800 and the available seats. With this endpoint, you would just fetch the simple available seats column, right, and return to the front end. So to create these in Redis, we will follow the same pattern: show 800 and show 800, show colon 800 colon available seats. So with this key, the application can simply fetch the value corresponding to this key and can directly return the value to the front end, and then the front end can see whether the seat can be allocated or the movie can be booked or not booked. So kind of that, right? So this is the practice which we need to follow, right? Now let's see one more thing which we discuss. For example, if we want to issue set some key, right, and if I want to create value with the space, for example sum and space value, if you see, this would throw error, right? Because this is not a valid value, right? The value cannot be the value should not have space actually. So if you want to store the value which is having space, you need to give double quotes in that case. For example sum space value, then it would be say, then it would be saying okay. Now if you see get some key, it would give you the value. So this is the simple get set key command, right, which can be used to create a key value pair. And that's all. If you enjoyed this video, found it useful, do hit like. It really helps the channel. Subscribe to stay updated with the Redis Zero to Hero series, and drop a comment with your questions or any queries, and share with your friends or teammates who want real production level Redis knowledge. See you in the next video. Thanks.